Hello, everyone. My name is Josh Collins. I'm the Director of Transportation for Peoria Public Schools. I was also the district's Return to School Committee Chairperson. I'm also a member of Peoria Public Schools COVID Committee. I wanted to talk to everyone today about a few reminders and must-knows regarding COVID-19 and the return to in-person learning on January 19th. First thing I want to talk about are masks. Masks are required in all buildings at all times. Please make sure that your students have a mask at all times, that they come to school with their mask, and that they're wearing their mask properly. Masks must be worn over the nose and mouth at all times while in the building. The only exception would be if they're eating lunch. As a reminder, with masks, some updates: the athletic face coverings, also known as gaiters or neck warmers, are not allowed. Those will not be allowed as masks. Students must provide a mask that has at least 2 layers or more to them. So the gaiters or neck warmers, athletic type face coverings will not be allowed. Physical distancing, please make sure that your students are adhering to physical distancing or social distancing, which is 6 feet or more, as much as possible. Please make sure that your students are aware that physical distancing is important and that needs to be maintained wherever possible, and it will help reduce the need for quarantine if your student were happen to be exposed to a positive case by maintaining that 6-foot social distancing. Reminder of COVID-19-like symptoms. That's a fever of 100.4 degrees or higher, a headache, shortness of breath, sore throat, vomiting, diarrhea, abdominal pain or stomach ache, congestion or runny nose, new loss of taste or smell, nausea, fatigue, muscle or body aches, and cough. If your student has any one or more of these symptoms, you must notify your school and quarantine. Please do not send your students to school if they are experiencing any one or more of these symptoms. Self-certification. All students and staff must self-certify each day before coming to school. Students can self-certify by having a temperature check or a symptom screen at the building. You can also fill out the self-certification slip that was provided to you at the school. You can also utilize Skyward for student self-certification. I want to go through our COVID-19 decision tree. The decision tree is what the district utilizes to help guide us on what quarantines and such are applicable in certain situations. This information is available to you via our website. The first column for for our decision tree is COVID positive. If you are COVID positive, you must quarantine for 14 days. In order to return to the building, you must be symptom-free for 24 hours. You must have completed the quarantine period. You also must obtain a release from isolation letter from your local health department. You will not be allowed to return to school without that release letter. Contact tracing must also occur for a period of 48 hours prior to the positive test. And any close contacts must quarantine for 14 days. Those close contacts must also receive a release from quarantine letter from the local health department. If you are symptomatic, you must quarantine for 10 days, or you must have a negative COVID-19 test. The test must be taken within 48 hours of the onset of symptoms. In order to return to the building, you must be symptom-free for 24 hours. You must have completed the quarantine period or provide a negative COVID-19 test. The documentation must be sent to the school prior to return. If you have an alternative diagnosis, such as migraines or allergies, and you're symptomatic, you must quarantine for 10 days, or you must provide a personal care physician's note indicating that the symptoms you're experiencing are not COVID related, and this would be for each onset of symptoms or each episode of symptoms. In order for you to return to the building, you must be symptom-free for 24 hours. You must have completed the quarantine period or must have obtained a personal care physician's note stating that your symptoms are not related to COVID and you do not have COVID-19. Documentation must be sent to the school prior to return, and the personal care physician's note must be obtained for each time you or student experiences symptoms. Household and siblings. If a sibling or household member or a member of your household is symptomatic, the entire household must quarantine. You must quarantine for 10 days, or the symptomatic individual must have a negative COVID-19 test. Again, the test must be taken within 48 hours of the onset of symptoms. In order to return to the building, the individual who was symptomatic within the household must be symptom-free for 24 hours. That same individual must have, the household must have completed the quarantine period, or the symptomatic individual must have a negative COVID-19 test. Documentation must be sent to the school prior to the return of the household. Anyone is close contact, and close contact is defined within 6 feet of a person who has been tested positive for COVID-19 for 15 minutes or more cumulatively throughout the day, or within a 24-hour period. You must quarantine for 14 days. In order to return to the building, you must be symptom-free for 24 hours. You must have completed the quarantine period, and you must obtain a release from quarantine letter from the local health department. You will not be allowed to return to the building without the release from quarantine letter from the health department. Documentation must be sent to the school prior to return. It is recommended that you do not get a COVID-19 test immediately if you're close contact. You should wait until you're symptomatic or 7 days before testing. Testing before that may result in a false negative. Just to recap for important reminders, if you have any one of the COVID symptoms, you must notify your school and quarantine or have a negative test. If you have been a close contact to a confirmed positive case, you must notify your school and quarantine. If you have a COVID-19 test administered for any reason at all, you must notify your school and quarantine. Due to privacy laws, personal information can only be shared with individuals on a need-to-know basis. If someone in your household has any of the listed symptoms, you must notify your school, and everyone in the household must quarantine, adults and children. If you travel internationally, you must notify your school before you leave and quarantine for 14 days upon return. COVID-19 testing available at Peoria Public Schools. We will have both PCR and antigen testing available. Both types of tests are a non-invasive nasal swab, similar to cleaning your ear. Antigen test results can be available within 15 minutes. Antigen testing will be available at some, but not all of our buildings beginning on January 19th. PCR results are available in about 24 hours. PCR testing is currently the gold standard for COVID testing, and PCR testing is available to families through the Heartland Clinic or at the True Wind Wraparound Center by appointment. All high school students will be subject to periodic PCR testing. Student testing will begin on January 19th. Testing will be conducted Monday through Friday. Students or families who opt out of testing will be assigned to virtual learning. Students who refuse testing will be treated as a positive and quarantined for 14 days or submit to a negative test to return to the building. Results should be available for these tests within 24 hours. All of our resources are available online to you. Our return to school plan, our decision tree, district metrics, local COVID testing information are available at peoriapublicschools.org at the 2020 fall return to school page. Thank you very much.